Hello, everyone. Wow, that last panel was amazing. The whole day has been great. I'm Buster Benson. I'm a product manager at Medium, and my talk for the next 45 minutes is going to be about the partner program, making money, facts, myths, and misconceptions. And yeah, so I really want to just, you know, spell out a lot of the changes that have come out in the last couple of weeks and talk through them a little bit more detail, talk about what we're learning, what we're thinking about, how we think about it, and really open it up also for questions and discussions because I definitely want to hear how all of you are thinking about it. So yeah, I've been at Medium almost a year now, and I've also been a writer on Medium for now going on 11 years. My first post was back in 2012, right when it launched. And so I have always loved the product, and I feel really excited to be working here, to be working on the partner program, because as a writer, as a person that's been on the internet for a long time, we all understand now, and Tony sort of hinted at this in the keynote. It's like we've seen how things can go wrong in various kinds of platforms, and I really believe that Medium has this opportunity to really basically like try to align all the incentives so the company, the writers, the readers, all of us have the same thing, same interests in mind, and so we can all help each other in a holistic, honest, authentic way. So hopefully that will come across as I talk about the partner program. I'm gonna go through not only the details but the reasoning behind why we made the choices we made, and hopefully give a sense for like how we're going to continue to make these decisions, so it won't seem like the rug is going to be pulled out in front of you at any point. And when things are confusing, it will help us sort of communicate about what these changes have meant, why we made them. So anyway, I'll start with what is the partner program? Why does it exist? I'll go through all the changes of the new partner program that launched on August 1st. And then we'll go through a bunch of sort of edge cases, questions that have come up since then, and then have some Q&A. So hopefully that sounds about right. And I know people are going to be listening in the comments, so I'll be looking for questions, ask some good questions, and we'll definitely get to them. So what is a partner program? It's really a way for us to work with writers and to partner with them in our mission to, pull out the great stories that we all have inside ourselves, the hidden wisdom, the deep knowledge, the personal experiences that are hiding inside us and don't have a place in the world right now to exist. Medium can be that place, and we partner with each other because, of course, there's a revenue share here. Like there's a membership revenue that we get, and we want to share that with the writers that create the stories and the writing that members read. But also, like this is an opportunity for us to really get aligned on purpose, and that's really what we can do here. Because when incentives like money and distribution and reach are on the table, there's a lot we can do to help each other. So, and it's existed for about 6 years, and it's gone through, this is the 4th iteration of it. So as you can tell, we're a company that likes to keep trying. Like when it's not perfect, we want to keep on trying. And this is the 4th version. I don't think it's the last version. It's going to continue to iterate. So we're listening to how people are responding, how it changes behavior, sort of new dynamics that emerge, and we're going to continue to adjust to those. So so we weren't supposed to make slides, but I made some paper slides. Here's how I describe the Medium partner program. So over here, we got the partner program and Boost. I sort of see these two programs as two pillars, I guess, of incentives that allow us to incentivize the kinds of things that happen on Medium. So partner program is about money, Boost is about reach, distribution, and both of these things, like, a lot of people tell me, I don't write for money, or, obviously that's not the joy of writing. The thing that makes us better about it is never primarily the money, right? It's always there. We want it to be something else, but at the same time, we want to acknowledge that it does take effort and time and energy to do this kind of work, and it's time that we could be spent doing something else. So we want to share some of the revenue that we get from memberships with people that the stories. In the middle here is the writing, and this is the whole point, right? Tony sort of mentioned how a lot of platforms out there, attention is the primary thing, right? Attention is what people want, so that platforms can sell that to advertisers or other services, products. For us, writing the story itself, that's central. That's what it's all about. And maybe it's not focused very well, but let's see. We want to find the hidden gems, the hidden wisdom, the deep knowledge, all that stuff. That's why we're here. That's why we come to work. That's what we want to increase in the world. And it's through having sort of incentivizing these things that we get the happy and wiser and more enriched members and readers. So we all become enriched through that process. If we learn that, like, different kinds of writing that was, built for other purposes would earn us more money, we wouldn't necessarily go after that. We want the good stuff. We want the hidden gems. And that sort of is super freeing for us to be able to actually be incentivized to go after that, because it helps us stay focused. We don't have to put ads on the page. We don't have to use the attention to sell other things. And the partner program is our way of basically giving writers, what some compensation for the stories that they write, and we get to decide on the algorithms and the things that sort of determine that. And that's where it gets tricky, right? Because there are many ways to distribute the money. You can just, like, previously it has been reading time. It's been a few other things in the past. And we've shifted now to a system where it's a little bit more complicated, and I think there's a good reason for that we'll get into. Well, actually, let's go to it right now. How do we think about incentivizing the right kinds of stories when it's really all about that ineffable, high quality, nuanced, cared, thoughtful writing that we can recognize when we see it, but obviously we've learned over time that it's really hard for an algorithm alone to identify these things, and that's why we have the Boost nomination pilot. That's why we're using people that are subject matter experts in the communities that care about these things to help us find these things, find these stories. So what has changed? It used to all be about reading time, and we'll talk about, I'm sure there'll be questions about this, but we could have just stuck with that. And so why did we choose to move away from it? One way of describing it is that reading time, while it's better than a lot of things, it's better than just a page view, for example, because you have to spend actual attention to accumulate reading time, right? It really is a very strong proxy for attention itself. And as such, it's not always the best proxy for that difference between time well spent, attention well spent, where I come out feeling more alive, more inspired, and that attention that's like poorly spent, where you come out feeling drained or sort of angry or frustrated or all these other things. And that distinction, the fact that both of those things can match to reading time, is the problem. And of course, it begs the question: why is it? How do we distinguish those two things? Because that's really the tough part, because it's just very difficult to do. And that's why we need people. Every story needs to be read, right? And it's only by reading it by someone who understands the genre, the topic, the category, the context, all this stuff, that they can read this and understand, is the story relevant to the conversation that's happening? Is this adding something to the conversation? So that's why it's important for us to bring back curators in a way where we're not the gatekeepers, right? We're not. It's not Medium, the company, that's making all these decisions, but rather a more open, community-based network of people that can scale much more broadly than the 80 people that work at Medium. And over time, we can, if we do this right, these people can become much more successful at choosing these stories than we ever would. I'll come back to this question about countries in a bit. But first, let me just say, like, so reading time, not quite enough. So what did we do? We added a bunch of other engagement signals that are a bit more, like, none of them are perfect. And so it's sort of the hope is that out of the many signals emerge a systems that tend more towards quality than the previous iteration of this program. So we now include things like clapping on a story, highlighting a story, replying to a story, following the author after reading a story. All these things now, you spend 5 minutes reading something, and you do nothing. That will earn you, like, 5 points. Let's say you spend 5 minutes reading a story, and you actually engage, and you get into a conversation with the author, and you highlight a few pieces, and you share it, and you add it to a list, and clap. You're clearly more involved. It's resonating more with you, and that's, to us, has shown so far to be a good signal for quality. And that's level one. I would call that sort of the engagement score. So here, I'll walk them through this now. You can sort of see right here, these are all things that now contribute to the core number of points that a story earns on a given day from a given person on a given story. And in addition to that, we have these 3 sort of adjustments that go into that sort of modify the points that happen for that day. The first one is the follower bonus, because we believe that, as a writer myself, it's easier to write when you can picture your audience, like when you can imagine them as complex, nuanced, thoughtful people. And the way that we do that when we're writing on the internet is to sort of understand, like, sort of gain a history and understand that there are sort of repeat readers and active readers, and you want to know who's reading your stuff. And when you do, and you realize that they're humans, then you can add a little bit more nuance, add a little bit more humor, sort of put things in context a little bit more, and it leads to better writing. So that's our hypothesis, and that's why when someone reads your story and does these things, and they happen to follow you, we put a little multiplier on these points, and you earn more for that engagement. This next one here is the boost bonus. So we've been talking a lot about boost. This is applied to the story as a whole. So if that story has been read by a nominator and has been nominated and has been sort of approved to be boosted, then that also gets a multiplier on top of the points. Now, these aren't, just to be clear, they're not on, this isn't a multiplier on each other. Like, they both get added to this one. So getting these together isn't better than getting one of them separate, you know what I mean? Hopefully. Let me actually say it one more time. I could say that you got 10 points from this, and this was like a 2x bonus. You got, now it's, wait, what did I say? 10, now it's 20. And if this was a 2x bonus, it would be 40. That's not how it works. It's more like 10, get 10 more for this, and then 10 more for this. And that's sort of how it works, is they're additive to each other. And again, we're not really talking, we're still going to be looking at leveling what these modifiers do to see what works best, because ultimately our goal is aligned with the authors. We want to create the signal that rewards the writing that actually fulfills the purpose most, right? That fulfills that ineffable feeling of, like, time well spent when you're reading it. Okay, so that's the whole thing. It's a little bit more complicated in the details, obviously. Oh wait, I'll talk about this last one too, which does have a big impact. So we all know how easy it is to say, what Tony said earlier, which is like, what did he say? Basically, like, it's a lower bar to read something than to want to pay for reading it, right? And so when you read a story and you see the title, you click on it, you read the first paragraph, you're like, no, this isn't what I wanted, and you hit the back button, or you tap or swipe, you go away. If it's under 30 seconds, we don't count that as a read. So it's basically like when that feeling of, like, I got here by whatever means, turned out to not be the case. And so I left. And this was the early days, like a big factor in Google's page rank, really. When Google started searching, cataloging the entire internet and trying to figure out what makes search, like, relevant results, they used this same signal to figure out, like, what's relevant. When people click on this, do they regret going there or not? So we're using that to just encourage people to write titles and add preview images that the story itself fulfills. And so if a story has a relatively high member read ratio, they will get a multiplier on top of their points again. And if it's a lower read ratio, it will be sort of a divider of that number. So that's it's probably, of the many questions I've had about this so far, this is the one that spurns the most questions, because there is some nuance to it, right? You can imagine thinking, well, what is my incentive to post this on my socials? Because if I send a bunch of people to Medium to my story and they're logged out or they're not members, they're going to look at it. They're not going to be able to read the whole thing, and they're going to bounce, and that's going to ruin my read ratio. That's not going to happen, because we only count member views and member reads. So if the person isn't logged in or they're not a member and they bounce, that's not going to affect your earnings. So you can really rest assured that the more people you send to your story, and we definitely do encourage you to share stories on socials and other places, because ultimately you are trying to build this sort of repeat readership on your stories. That's what leads to earnings, and everybody wins in that case, right? You get your story read, we get our story read, members get to read your story, and that's why it's such a virtuous cycle there. So I'll stop there, and I'm going to read these questions here that I see in the chat and see what we can do to answer some of them. But if you have any other, so that's basically the how it works section of story earnings calculations. Okay, so let me read these. Okay, so this first question here is it really that hard to make the Medium Partner Program available to all countries? Yeah, I mean, everything is possible, right? So we had about 33 countries supported in the partner program before August 1st, and now we have 42. So we added 9 more countries, and we are doing the work to support another 60 or so. And so that's going to triple the number of countries we support in the next few months. And we're very excited about that, because, philosophically, there is no reason for us to not be available to any country in the world, right? The only hurdle at this point is technical, and being a small team, nothing is impossible, but all things cost something. So this is pretty high on our priority list. We want to do this. It's just like we have to do the work to do it, which means we currently use Stripe. We have no philosophical reasons to not support PayPal or Payoneer or any of these other payment platforms. And ideally, once we max out all the countries that Stripe can support, we're going to look at alternatives and try to get into other ones as well, because everyone has a story. There's no reason that your geography should be the constraint for you to participate. That's just an arbitrary thing that has nothing to do with how the quality of the story is going to tell. So yes, we want to do that. It's very important to me. It's very important to me also that it's very important to the team. It's very important to Tony. We also want to support, other languages in the stories as well. So we just want to be as open as possible to writing and to stories. And we want to build a product that makes that work well. Okay, hopefully that's sufficient. All right, how does reading time work for poetry? So, poetry is great. So a lot of people were worried that with a 30-second limit. So one thing I didn't mention was when you load the story on your phone or your tablet or you're on the web, the first 30 seconds don't count towards your earnings, and it's only after 30 seconds that it sort of turns on the earnings and things start to happen. And there was a lot of worry that short form writing would take a hit here, and it doesn't. I mean, for the most part, it definitely doesn't. 30 seconds poetry might be short, but it's complex, right? It's dense, it's engaging. So we haven't seen any drop in earnings for poetry. In fact, we've mostly seen an upside, a growth in earnings, because of a side effect of a decision we made in the previous partner program to limit reading time earnings to be twice what the estimated reading time was. So if you wrote a really short poem that could be read in a minute, a given person could only accrue 2 minutes of earnings for you, which, again, to me is saying It's not the length of the story. Like you could be on that page for hours, even if it's a 1 hour or 1 minute to read, because it could spark a discussion and you could come back to it multiple times, all these kinds of other things. You might just want to think about it. And oftentimes there's some context about the poem or an image or anything like that. So long story short, reading time is the new changes for the partner program are, I would say, pro short form. Now that doesn't mean that we're anti long form. And this is another question that comes up a lot. It's not that none of this is going to dampen the long form either, because we're still keeping reading time as a factor. It's a pretty big factor. And, all this other stuff, clapping, highlighting, replying, all that stuff does tend to, the longer it is, the more opportunity there is for that kind of stuff to happen. So hopefully that works. If anyone has any anecdotes about poetry or has specific questions about short form, I'm happy to answer this more. But so far, it looks like the impact is positive. Okay. Several engagement metrics now: reads, claps, highlights. Can you elaborate on the relative importance of each of these? So I can elaborate on it philosophically, which is we don't want any one aspect of the overall formula to dominate. So we want it to be possible. And this is part of and this is our learning phase for a lot of the stuff. Like this is going to potentially change over time, but this is how we're going to learn. We weighted these things to be such that, if you're in a genre where, engagements like these are low, but, following is high or boosting is high or, other things are high, then you're not going to have any advantage or disadvantages relative to genres or stories that are heavy on engagement or heavy on highlights, but low on claps or any of that stuff. So we do have weights for each of these things, and we are going to continue to monitor and level them in a way that they represent an equal part of the pie in terms of course, each of these things also has a sort of a fraud or abuse factor, so we're going to factor that in as well. All these things also have measures to adjust for that and will be built up over time. So I can't really say exactly what the weights are because they're going to change, but ultimately we're saying that the weights will, this is where it's important for us to understand that we are aligned on incentives here. We're trying to get to a point where we can trust the output of earnings calculations, and it's as aligned as possible to quality. Okay. I used Medium's listen function, told that readers get 0% read, even though I've deeply read and engaged in the past. That's true or false? That's false. We do track listening time as reading time. So all that, I know it's easy to imagine that we overlooked that, but we didn't, and it does work. So reading time, listening time are equivalent. I think what is confusing is the meter at which a page is read. What would be the estimated read or scroll estimated page scan speed, which would count as a read? Can you expand on the 30-second rule? Yes, I mean, this is interesting because, in a ideal world, we could actually, the idea is that whatever we track as read time is exactly how much time it was read, but that, not yet, our computers and phones can't yet track our actual reading time. What they can track is scrolling and tapping and that kind of thing. So what we do is when you load the page or the screen, it starts a clock, and every time you move the page or move back or go forward, we take a timestamp, and the time between any of these timestamps is added up or subtracted and becomes the read time. So if you open it up and you read for 30 seconds and then you click on something, you go away, that's 30 seconds. And then you come back, or if you read for 30 seconds and then that tab is open for an hour, what happens is that we track a fraction of that time as read time. So up to like 30 seconds is counted as read time, and the rest is considered sort of passive time. So it is not a perfect algorithm, but that's sort of how it's always been. And it does track that in 30-second segments. So every time you start scrolling or tapping, it restarts the clock and counts up from there. hopefully that made sense. If not, I can try to elaborate more. Let me know. What is confusing is the meter. Oh, actually, no, it's a double question. There we go. Do you see your points being multiplied or divided based on read ratio? Yes. Yes, that's what happens. So it'll be normalized based on the average read ratio, but it's going to adjust. Again, this is one of the factors that we're taking to play. This has so far been, one of the things we did when we were modeling this. We modeled this for many, many months, going back in time, saying like, here's how earnings worked in the old system. Here's how they would have worked in the new system, and that's why it took quite a while to ship this. Just like we wanted to get it right, and we're continuing to model it going forward. But when we added this factor, it did really improve it's very subjective, but the quality of the stories that we're finding the most. And yeah, we're not saying exactly how much that multiplication or division is, but we do sort of adjust, move things up, move things down based on the read ratio. Let's see. So I have until the 40-minute mark. Okay, we got 15 minutes. Great. And I do have more to go through, but I want to answer all the questions too, so keep them coming if there are more. Let's see. When you say demonstrate more engagement, do you mean of the readers, or is it that the expectation would be that the writers would engage more? Readers, yeah. So the writer engaged. So this is a good question. I actually think there could be something here. When I'm reading stories and trying to gauge whether the quality of them, and we have a lot of these hashing sort of conversations about, is this boostable, is this not? Oftentimes, you look at the comments and you're like, when the author's in there and people are commenting and you see that they're actually responding to the concerns, the questions, like that is a better experience of a story. So I can imagine a time when writer engagement is factored in, but currently not. It's all reader engagement that is calculated. So it's basically the way the logic or the thinking behind it is that members pay a certain amount of money to access Medium to get the stories, and by them, like through their actions and behaviors and etc., a portion of their revenue goes to the stories and authors that they engaged with. So that's sort of why it's in that direction. It's going from the readers who are paying to the writers who we are paying. How do you join the partner program? Medium.com/partner-program is where you get started. And if you match the 3 or 4 criteria there, you can get instantly approved and start earning immediately, pretty much. So that's where you go, medium.com/partner-program. All right. So another question. I was excited by the new guidance, but when I saw the new changes come out, I was surprised to see a significant drop. I went from a 40% read rate to a 1%. With reading now being considered reading 30 seconds or more, I was expecting to see it tick up in my reads. I'd love insight on this to better understand how it works. So I should mention this. The stats page, the new stats page is rolled out today. So the read ratio that you have known from the previous several years was calculated based on people scrolling all the way to the bottom of the story. That was at one point an important and a used metric within Medium for earnings. It has not been for a long time. And it's sort of, in my mind, incentivized shorter stories, right? Because like I have a 16-minute read and the read rate is like 13 or 18% or something, because it's long. It's like, not everyone's going to get to the bottom. And it was oftentimes, it's almost like a proxy for the length of the story as much as anything else. So we didn't want to use that number when calculating earnings, because again, we don't want to punish longer form, like Medium's a long form place. And so the 30-second threshold for the read ratio now is there to basically give a level playing field for short and longer form stories. And so I would go back and check out your read rate for these stories and see what I mean. I doubt there's a 1% read ratio on the stats page today. I think it just rolled out to 100% like an hour ago. So yeah, that was fun launching on a Saturday, but shout out to the team that did that. Thank you. But yeah, it's been confusing. That's why I wanted the stats page to go out. I'm sorry it was late, but I think you're gonna like it. The read ratios now will not only be at the top, you'll see like a lifetime sort of bar of stats, which will include read ratio. That number at the very top will show you the read ratio across all members, all people. So, logged in, logged out members, all of them. And if you scroll down to the read section, there's now going to be a little chart that breaks down reads based on this new 30-second metric. And it will show you the member read time on a given day. So you'll see like, there were 100 reads and, 80% read ratio for members. And that's the number that we use to calculate earnings for that day. So take a look. It hasn't been out. It has been very confusing because the information you needed to understand this new calculation wasn't available yet. So it's totally reasonable that everyone would be confused, but it's out there now. And I could speak to the drop in earnings too, if we have time. I think this is probably an important one. It turned out that when we modeled this, and we knew this was happening, and we understand why, but when we modeled this, it turned out that stories tended to earn more in their first month of their life, and they tended to earn less in the longer tail of the story's life. And this is not built in intentionally into the program, but it does show up for a lot of things, and we wanted to understand why. And for the people that have a lot of back catalog, hundreds, thousands, sometimes stories over the past 11 years, that is the accumulated effect of not getting the 10, 30 cents on every single one of these things every month has led to a drop in earnings for that kind of story. And we do want to understand why. It's not intentional. It's a result of one of these constraints about not counting or not turning on earnings until you reach that 30-second mark. So when you're coming from Google or from search, I think what was happening is that those visits were, for one reason or another, not as often longer visits, and so they often went back and bounced, and maybe it wasn't what they were looking for, and so they went to something else. And yet those still would accumulate some earnings. And now that the bar is a little higher, that's not happening. And I'm curious about how we want to adjust for this. Ultimately, we do still philosophically believe that we want to incentivize stories that do draw readers in, that sort of have them actually read the longer version of the story. But yeah, that's why it's happening, I think. And it was not intentional. It wasn't like us trying to like Robin Hood, like the money from old stories and bring them to the new ones. No, it's a side effect of the decisions we made. All right, let's see. Read somewhere that a good read ratio is 50-60%. I'm nowhere near that. Again, check out the new stats page. The old read ratios were lower, pretty much universally, than the new ones. So check again. I think every time I've gone in and dug into this with people that have had concerns about this before the stats page launched, it's turned out that they were doing much better than they thought. So check it out, and yeah, hit me up if you still have questions about that. I know 30 seconds is the minimum to count as a read. After that, doesn't matter how long members spend reading. Yes. So we still use read time as a input into this, and if you can read up to the longer you read, the more money you're going to earn, and probably the more engagement and everything else. So that's still in there. It's just not the only signal, and it's not only used. I think because it's not the only signal, you can't just look at read time and match it. It's not going to always match to your earnings. Are earnings still partially determined by the percentage of members' total time spent reading one of those articles? No. So this is a change. It's normalized across all the reading time for that day across all members. So we're not splitting it up like that anymore. The scrolling and time away from an article take into consideration if a reader is reading something that was hyperlinked in an article. So if you, what it doesn't do is it doesn't only take that first scroll time. Like if you go to something else and you come back, or if you revisit the article or you bookmark it and then you come back to it later in the day or come back on another day, all those things will still count up to this time. And so it's not going to punish it any more than it ever did before. I hope that makes sense. Yeah, it's not perfect, but it is as it's exactly how it worked before. Other than that 30-second start time thing. Okay, so 10 minutes left. Do pictures add up to the length of the article? So we no longer care about the length of the article. What you care about is how much time is spent on that page. So it doesn't matter if you have to scroll to the bottom. If you have, it really just matters how long you're on that page. It used to matter, but it doesn't matter anymore. And I think in the past it wasn't actually mapped to the estimated reading time, so it did cause some weird side effects, which are gone. Should I go back to the old stories and delete the link to become a referred member? I mean, yes, but I also know that that's a huge pain for a lot of people who have hundreds of stories. So we're not going to break the link. The link's still going to function. It's just that they're going to stop working in terms of accruing new referred members on September 1st. It'll go to a different, sort of a page that has, different kinds of messaging, but it's not going to break. And, it's not going to affect things like, again, like scrolling to the bottom anymore. So I love these questions. I could probably, these are all really good questions. They're all questions that I've heard, and I want to provide the answer. We want to provide the answers for. So yeah, this is really great. I think we'll have time for a few more though. Let me just make sure that there's not something else I wanted to say. Oh man. Okay, so this was like my cheat sheet where I was like, what about all of these different kinds of stories? How is the new partner program gonna affect older stories versus new stories? We sort of covered that. Evergreen versus timely. Like an evergreen story that still is relevant, that people still read and engage with and talk about, that's still going to earn. There's no actual punishment for older stories. It's really just the quality of the engagement on them. Short form versus long reads, we covered that. Personal versus impersonal. One of the things we really want to be is as open as possible. Being personal doesn't mean that you have to be talking about your life directly. It could be about weaving your own personal experience into the words, writing it in a way that only you could write it, making it unique and idiosyncratic to you. And I think that's really what we mean is like, don't just like make it super something that anyone could have written, obviously, but that's our bias, I think, there. Provocative versus inspiring. There's a question about does a provocative story still get all the claps and highlights, but they're like hate commenting? That's where boost comes in, is that those stories will tend not to get boosted. And that's where we get to have an opinionated point on leaning away from the kinds of provocative stories that don't really add to a conversation, but are just there to like turn up sort of polarizing emotions. That doesn't mean we don't want like sharp, pointed criticisms and intelligent, nuanced sort of evaluations and analyses of difficult topics. We actually do really want that stuff. Okay, so let's see, I got two more. Right. What are your honest thoughts about Medium writers who also sell courses and how to write on Medium to earn money? My personal opinion, and there is that great. I mean, we're all if that's what you are passionate about and that's what you want to write about, you want to help people. I love, the fact that you're trying to help other writers, like other people. That's great. I think as far as the story itself goes, we still boost it according to the quality guidelines. So making it, adding to the conversation, not just entire advertisement, but actually weaving in your own personal experience, that kind of stuff will make it more likely to be boosted. But we have no philosophical thing against them as a category. All categories should be welcome in high quality segment of them. Let's see. I'm confused about Medium as a place to earn part-time income from my writing. I mean, this is a sensitive sort of topic, because like on the one hand, we don't want you to only be writing on Medium to make money, because that's sort of a world that's more like, you know, putting the attention and the outcomes ahead of the content and stories. But, you know, it's up to you. And it's open, it's free, there's no ads, you can do whatever you want. As far as whether or not it will succeed in the partner program is based on the quality guidelines, right? So I definitely just like welcome everything, and then you know, we will distribute and pay out according to the quality guidelines that we have come up with. But it's nothing personal. We're not saying you're a bad person or a bad writer or anything like that. It's just, you know, our preference. Can you leave a call to action and ask readers to leave a clap or comment at the end of your story? It's up to you. I mean, I think this is one of the reasons why we put like the follower thing is I want people to exercise discernment in terms of who they want to follow on Medium. And if you are constantly pitching and talking about that stuff, you know, you might not get as many follows. Maybe you'll get more, who knows? But it all contributes to the feeling like, did the reader come away from this feeling like they spent their time well? And it's always going to be a trade-off between all these things. Use your discernment, use your judgment, do what you feel, you know, is the most aligned with your own values, and that's what we encourage. So, I mean, as a writer on the internet, I put call to actions in my stories for decades. So, it's part of being online is that we're oftentimes talking about other things, and there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, 3 minutes. Can we get more demographic info into who's engaging with our stories? So this is a good one, because what launched today is really just like a foundational layer. Like we're digging ourselves out of the hole of the previous stats page. Like we're trying to level it up to the point where we can build on it. And we have big plans for helping writers understand how to become better at the craft, how to like understand what's happening on their stories. And I love analytics, I love data, I love stats. So it's all, and if it's all in the spirit of learning about how to sort of tap into these stories that are inside you and learn about what resonates most with people. Yeah, if demographic information is going to help, then we're going to add it. We haven't nailed down exactly what the right thing is. The biggest thing I want to add to the stats page, and I know we're not supposed to talk about vaporware here, but I really want to show how often a story is displayed to a user before they click on it, right? In the home feeds, in the emails, and other search results on your profile page, before the view happens. We call them presentations, because this is one of the benefits of being on Medium, is that like there is a whole ecosystem, a whole audience that's built in, and showing that people are like your story is being distributed in these various places is oftentimes the missing link in helping people understand how their views are happening and where they're resonating. So I think there's a lot there that we can do. Let's see. Are earnings still partially based on how much time members spend reading my stories? No, I think I answered that one. Okay, cool. Great. I think I got through all the questions. I hope that was helpful. The takeaway really is like hopefully this came across, is that we do want to help writers. We love writers. We want to help you bring out your stories, resonate with people, find new audiences, talk about what you're passionate about, because not only is that what our members want to read, but it's a fulfilling sort of cycle where, I think the more people can read this stuff on the internet, because there's a dearth of it out there right now. If we can be a safe community where this is shining, where this is like the thing that's upheld, I think everybody wins. We're going to continue growing. There's going to be more readers, more authors, and we'll stick around longer and continue building this. So thank you so much for all the great questions. Like that was a lot, and you can find me on Medium. We definitely have we go through the replies on all these blog posts all the time. So feel free to continue the conversation, continue asking questions. We're listening to it all, and we're not just dropping this and won't come back to the partner program for 5 more years. We're going to continue iterating on it. We're excited to get more countries in there. We're excited to get the stats to be more real time. We're excited to bring boost into the whole partner program, so that that's another way to earn money. So yes, thank you so much, and yeah, have a great rest of your Medium day.